All right. Shall we start? Yes. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatar varishtaya Ramakrishna te namaha. Oh, what is it that we usually chant? Oh, Tava Kathamrutam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiritam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Gnantiye Puridajana. Okay, so I think we were reading this particular chapter. It's called Advice for Householders, something along these lines. Let me just see what is the name of the chapter. Rules for Householders and Monks. Okay. And oops. Yes. A young man of 27 or 28, known as Thakur entered the room with a few friends and saluted the master. He lived at Baranagar and was the son of a Brahmin Pandit. He was practicing the Katha. This is basically, is it necessary to keep this light on? No. We don't need it. Okay. Good. It's okay. That's just fine. Yeah. So Katha, it's basically narrating stories in some semi-poetry form, usually based on the Puranas. Okay. Yeah. In order to earn money to meet his family's expenses. At one time, he had been seized with the spirit of renunciation and had gone away from his family. Even now, he practiced spiritual discipline at home. Master, have you come on foot? Where do you live? Dada, yes, sir. I have walked from home. I live at Baranagar. Baranagar is just next to Dakshineshwar, maybe a kilometer, if that. The Indian Statistical Institute is in Baranagar. But yeah. Okay. Have you come here for any particular purpose? Dada, I have come here to visit you. I pray to God, but why do I suffer now and then from worries? For a few days I feel very happy. Why do I feel restless afterwards? Master, I see. Things have not been fitted quite exactly. The machine works smoothly if the mechanic fits the cogs of the wheel correctly. In your case, there is an obstruction somewhere. Dada, yes, sir, that must be so. Master, are you initiated? Dada, yes, sir. Master, do you have faith in your mantra? A friend of Thakur Dada said that the latter could sing well. The master asked him to sing. Thakur Dada sang. I shall become a yogi and dwell in love's mountain cave. I shall be lost in yoga beside the fountainhead of bliss. I shall appease my hunger for knowledge with the fruit of truth. I shall worship the feet of God with the flower of dispassion. I shall not seek a well to slake the burning thirst of my heart, but I shall draw the water of peace into the jar of my soul. Drinking the glorious nectar of thy blessed lotus feet, I shall both laugh and dance and weep and sing on the heights of joy. Master. Ah, what a nice song. Fountainhead of bliss, fruit of truth. Laugh and dance and weep and sing. Your song tastes very sweet to me. Why should you worry? Pleasure and pain are inevitable in the life of the world. One suffers now and then from a little worry and trouble. A man living in a room full of soot cannot avoid being a little stained. Dada, please tell me what I should do now. Master, chant the name of Hari morning and evening, clapping your hands. Come once more when my arm is healed a bit. So this is one unit of this particular chapter, and then we'll go on to the second later on. This gentleman who has come is basically saying what we always complain about. Yeah? I mean, some days we feel some yes, good spiritual practice is moving well, and then the next day, no, mind is not getting concentrated during meditation, mind is disturbed. Uh, feel like going and shouting at that fellow who behaved mischievously today, etc., etc. Yeah. So some days meditation is good, some days meditation is bad. That's all. And of course, I mean, this is a common. I mean, the thing that Sri Ramakrishna points out is that this is not something to be particularly bothered about. This is the habit of the mind. And what happens is that this is not something short term. Yeah, it's not something that suddenly changes overnight. Yeah, I remember many years back. Yeah, it was maybe 95 or 96 thereabouts. So Bhaskaranji had our Seattle son. He had written a play, and somebody comes along and says that, I mean, so in his play, this is a syndrome he epitomizes, I mean, or illustrates. So some gentleman came along and says, see, I have done japa for 1 week, and I have read such and such book, and I am not getting into samadhi. What should I do? The response was, stop taking fast food. So that's the thing. I mean, so basically, I think what Sri Ramakrishna does here is that he puts the problem in perspective and says that, look, yeah, you're singing, which means you're singing with some amount of devotion, and therefore it should not be something that you should take too much to heart, and carry on with whatever one is doing, and essentially understand that, look, it's, I mean, even whatever, I mean, it's not something that is, I mean, what is the cause for this kind of thing that the way we think? I mean, basically, we do such and such and immediately expect something or the other to come along. Yeah? And of course, Vivekananda in the appendix to the gospel, he puts it in somewhat scathing and picturesque terms. He says, look, this is not a snake that you charm. Yeah. So that something like this, whatever you want to call it, realization, God, nirvana, whatever be your particular path, it's not going to come dancing to you because you have done such and such, such and such, such and such. And in this particular context, it's important to understand that what one is seeking is not the output of any kind of work. Yeah? It's not something that is caught within this cause and effect framework. And the reason for this expectation is precisely this, that one does such and expects such and such because in our day to day life, we do things and get things as fruits of that labor. Yeah? We expect that this uncaused thing, that whatever it is, whatever our vague understanding of the spiritual goal is also exactly something like that. And this misunderstanding is really the cause of this kind of rapid expectation. I mean, one does such and such, one will get such and such in return. But if that were the case, if that were really the case, then one should extrapolate from one's day to day experience also. Yes, one puts in some amount of work, one gets a particular thing, and then one has to, in order to, I mean, that is not permanently satisfying. So one has to put in further labor to get further. That's I mean, if one extrapolates from one's day to day experience, that's what one should be doing. But here, what we are really doing is something that is, well, for want of a better word, something infinite, or in other words, something that is not limited by various constraints. We are expecting something that is not constrained by a limited amount of effort. Whatever be the effort, it could be a lifetime, lifetime's effort, could be. Whatever it is, one is expecting something that is not finite in exchange for a finite amount of labor. Yeah? So if you think of the labor that you put in as currency, so for a finite amount of currency, one wants some kind of infinite amount of return. So obviously, it's not going to be that way. It's not logically possible, and it's not reasonable. And therefore, one needs to understand what exactly the spiritual goal one is seeking is. It is not some experience, because if it is just some experience, then you put in some amount of money, you can go to the Niagara, see the Niagara, come back. Whatever it is, that picture of the Niagara will stay with you. That's all. So yes, okay, somebody wants to go, has a larger amount of investment and wants to see the North Pole, fine. Put in that extra amount of input, go and have a look at the North Pole, so fine. I have all one's life, I'll say, okay, yes, I have seen the North Pole as a fact. But here, that's not what one is seeking. Whichever way one wants to call it, from a devotional point of view, if one was seeking God, and then at a certain level, it is, one has to say that basically something that is what is being sought is some permanent source of joy, which is not qualified by time. Therefore, no amount of effort within the domain of time is adequate for that. So what exactly is it? So which means basically that no amount of effort is adequate for this. Or if it's from a point of view of knowledge, then the principle of knowledge, unqualified by any constraining factor, is what one is expecting. So, which means basically, so then when we come to knowledge, so we put in a certain amount of effort and then finally manage to get through our classes, and at the end of a certain number of years, manage to understand maybe a very limited amount of one particular subject. Yeah. And then this whole vast amount of knowledge that, we come across everything that we don't, we come across something or the other we don't know every day. Yeah. If one is in this business of learning new stuff. So which means that a finite amount of effort is not going to give us an infinite amount of knowledge. That's what it is. So which means essentially having a reasonably clear idea that what one is seeking is not something that can be obtained through any amount of effort. What is really possible? What is really possible is that this psychophysical organism, which we call our body and mind, that can be tuned towards this principle of unqualified joy or unqualified knowledge, unlimited knowledge. That's the maximum that we can do. What is in our hands? Train this psychophysical system, or essentially prepare this laboratory of the body and mind to be attuned to something like this. That is all that one can do. Yeah? The object is going to either shine forth in its own right. Yeah? If one looks at it from the point of view of knowledge, that knowledge is uncreate and comes forth on its own merit. From a devotional point of view, grace is something that is not caught within this framework of cause and effect. So whether one is looking at it from a devotional point of view or from an analytical point of view, one is seeking something not caught within the framework of time-space causation. Therefore, no amount of effort one puts in can legitimately be regarded as adequate, as in terms of currency, to get something as a fruit. And if we think that way, that something we'll get in exchange, then that thing is going to be limited. In other words, it's going to come along like a rasagulla or some sweet, and after a few days, it's just going to wear out. The novelty is going to wear out. So what we are seeking needs to be borne in mind. And therefore, this is my mind. Nobody else is responsible for the conditions of one's mind. That's all. What do I have to do? I've basically given it leeway to behave like a monkey all over the place. So we'll have to train it. It'll become less of a monkey over years. That's all. That's the maximum that we can do. Yeah. So essentially, training the mind to be attuned to such higher truths, higher joys, is all that one can do. That's all that is there in one's hand. And that's what we can do. How long? As long as it takes. What is one going to do after that? In any case, yeah? I mean, suppose one gets that, and then what is it? Is one going to go around saying that, oh, I have this 1 kilo of bliss? No. Right? So actually, in fact, I remember one of our very fine sadhus. He is generally very silent, very. Swami Prabodhanji, he used to be in charge of our San Francisco Center. So he narrated this thing to the story. He says he gets a phone call at around 10 o'clock at night one day. So this nut phones him and says, "Hello, Swami, I have just experienced Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What should I do next?" So Prabhupada says, "Please enjoy it." And then put his phone down. So, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's, see, we always think of these things as certain achievements. That's not what they are. I mean, basically, the thing is, it's all that we can do is essentially tune our minds to some higher truths. And say, for example, here's the thing. Suppose one is, I mean, and it's not something that some esoteric, mystical things. Even when we are children and we are trying to work out some problem that has been assigned to us in class, yeah? Sometimes the problem we keep on trying various ways, don't succeed, and keep on at it, and then at some point of time the solution flashes. I write it down. What did we really do? We trained the mind to be receptive to the solution at some point of the time. At some point of time, the solution flashed. What is in our hands is this little grind. Go on. Yeah? That's all that is there. That's all we can do. It's not that amount of effort. Somebody suddenly, within a couple of minutes, gets the answer. Some days we are in a dull mood. The same problem which we would have gotten maybe 1 year back in a flash, it takes us maybe a couple of days. Sometimes we forget things, etc., etc. So this needs to be, and therefore this business of someday the mind being happy and joyful and the other day the mind not being happy and not being joyful is not something that should throw us off kilter. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, essentially, this is whichever way one likes to think about it, it's essentially taking the point of view of an observer with respect to the mind. It's the nature of the mind to sometimes be happy, sometimes be sad, go forth I mean, so essentially, not identifying with it too much, putting it in perspective. Yeah. That's this part of the story. Okay, so we can, today we seem to have time. Very good. So we'll go on to the next one, but before that, I'd like to open up for further questions and discussion. Anybody has any points to make? Yes.
It seems like this realization, what you said, it cannot be a cause and effect. Right?
Exactly.
But when Thakur saw touched Naren and he went, it seemed like the touch was the cause.
What is it that happened?
He said like everything was vanishing. He said of parents at one place.
Fine. So did it become real to Swamiji? That's it. So it's not a realization. If it is something that is real, it stays. So it is an experience, and experiences come and go. That's it.
And they can be with cause and effect.
Yes, experiences can be with cause and effect. Yes, that's true. I mean, so for example, if I lift this and let it go, it falls. That's it. Well, that is something that one is experiencing. Yes. So basically, what is happening is that see what does this word realization literally mean? Realize, literally. Make real. So is that something that is real to him? He says, no. What is his response? He says, no, I have a very strong mind. This fellow did some voodoo with me. Right? It's not something that he's treating as. Yeah.
I don't know. Too young that you said, like, tell me before the operation, I can withdraw my. Or that was
That's a
not.
different thing, right? What is it? So essentially, the mind of the yogi has been trained, in this case, Duryanji, so that he can dissociate his mind from the body. Which means basically this that he has taken this practice, I am not the body, I am not the mind, to the point where whatever sensation, I mean, essentially, these things happen to us instinctively, right? Somebody touches our, and we have a sensation. Now, suppose one is under the effect of a local anesthesia. Is one going to feel any effect? What has happened? Under the effect of local anesthesia, what has happened is that certain nerve endings have been numbed for the time being. They are not carrying a certain response to the brain, all of that. And finally, the subject is not catching hold of that as this is my experience. Correct? Usually, as for us normal people, the sensation of this signal carried to the brain and blah, 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 and the registration of that comes simultaneously with this thing that I am subjectively experiencing such and such. Yeah. The whole point of this is essentially to take this collection of subjective experiences, understand it clearly, and see that there is no indisputable connection between the external stimulus and this my eye catching hold of it as and saying this is my experience. That connection has been cut. This is exactly what I am not the body, I am not the mind, viveka, or withdrawing of the mind, this pratyahara in yogas, or putting the mind on God in devotion. All of that is precisely this, taking the subject and focusing on the subject itself as opposed to conflating it with objective experience at every moment of our sleep, right? So what is happening is that person has that capacity to dissociate that connection, that which we usually think of as an inseparable connection is not an inseparable connection to that person's mind. That's all. So the mind has been trained to withdraw itself from an external stimulus. That's it. Okay. Any other questions? I mean, so for instance, I mean, it's we will probably not be able to do it to that effect, to that extent. But each of us is free to do it to the extent that we can. We can. Yeah. So that's it. Yes, Libby.
So, Maharaj, starting with, he said some days the mind is good and some days the mind
Absolutely.
isn't good.
Yes.
Now, as we, progress in our life, everyone's journey may be at some stage or the other. We think we have overcome things. When we were younger, maybe we had a lot of anger or a lot of some kind of emotion.
Mhm.
And then we think, I've got control over that. And then again, suddenly,
Yeah.
when and where it comes and hits us.
Yes, absolutely correct. Therefore, Therefore, the point is that thought should not be allowed to be. It should not be encouraged. That's it. Bhagavad Gita till the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So, in fact, actually, that's one of the things in our monastic community. It is often said. Yeah. This is in Bengali. I'll translate it. Udbe sadhu, udbe chai, tobe sadhur gungai. What does it mean? After the sadhu is cremated and the ash has blown away in the wind, then only you praise the sadhu for the life that he has led. That's a thing. Basically, it means till the end, this business has to be kept. I mean, here's the thing, and for that, it's important to understand that look, if this is supposed to be a means of this method of disciplining oneself and progressing, if this is regarded as a means to something, some experience which comes, some light, something, blah, 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 etc., etc., then there is going to be, you basically thinking of that spiritual experience as some kind of currency to be used for something else, which is definitely not particularly spiritual. Yeah. So then it will not, one will not feel the impetus to carry on with it. Yeah. On the other hand, if this is, I mean, one does not debate with oneself, oh, I have brushed my teeth for so many days, for so many years, still my teeth are not. You get up in the morning and brush your teeth because your mouth will stink otherwise. That's all. So it's once it becomes something that is basically brushing the mental teeth. That's all. So becomes part and parcel of one's life. It's the way of life one has chosen. That's it. So therefore, I mean, it should not be really regarded as something where you have milestones in terms of achievements. Yeah? Achievements are usually an external thing, and therefore this is process of self-development where nobody else need to know. That's it.
Swami,
Yes, please.
isn't the observation of the mind
Yes.
a thought itself? I mean, it kind of manifests as a thought, is what I feel.
Really?
I don't know. I mean, maybe at my
No. I mean, see, the thing is, at some point of time we are playing with words. So here is the thing. When you are looking at something in front of you, say for example, I'm looking at this laptop. So there's an observer. I mean, see, the thing is, in any act of cognition, it could be a mental thing, it could be a physical act of seeing something. What is your usual way, common sense way of categorizing it, understanding it intellectually? There is an object of action or observation, there's a subject of action, observation, and there is this act of cognition that is participating between these two, right? This is why in a grammatical sentence, there's a subject, there's an object, there's a verb. That's all. Yeah. So it's something reasonably common sense. Yeah. What all this is supposed to be doing is emphasize the subject. That's it. Yeah. See, this is not supposed to be something which you develop a logical framework for. It is an experimental science, which means you have to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, so what exactly is supposed to be the output of it? When I am in the throw of some kind of an emotion that comes up, threatens to carry me off my feet. Yeah? If I have been diligent in my practice of observing the mind going up and down, what will happen is that when such an emotion comes, I will be also able to treat it as something that is making its advent into my mental horizon and it's going to move away. Right? Why? Because this earlier experience is that, oh, these things come, then they go. Yeah, in fact, in Vivek Chudamani, it says that it's like this huge sky. What one has done is actually one has expanded one's mind through this imagery or whatever, where various thoughts come, stay for some time, and then move off. So this also is going to come along, play around, do its nuisance for some time, push off. That equanimity is going to be the test. Nobody else needs to tell you about it. But if that practice has developed, you'll see that okay, these things which used to disturb me much more maybe 2 years back are disturbing me a little less. That's all. It's this experimental output that should be the test of that experience. Yeah, not the logical framework. Yeah, because it's not going to. It's. I mean, so here's the point. So, for example, suppose take a physical experiment. I mean, so these electrons are fired, and to something that's called a double slit experiment. Yeah. So you have if the electrons are fired and you close one of them, close one of those slits, some part on the screen actually increases. Yeah. So here's the point. If you have two things, what is our common sense interpretation? If you have two holes and you are firing bullets, yeah, and you close one of those things, what will happen is that everywhere things should decrease, right? What happens, in fact, is that in some place, actually stuff increases. This is the experimentally observed fact. Now, before starting to fire, I start saying that no, this gun does not have the logical property of an electron gun. Why? Because an electron is not a well-defined entity, etc., etc. The point is that we are not going to end up doing the experiment. Yeah. So here there is an empirical system, namely this body and mind. Yeah. This is our laboratory. And it's not something that is supposed to be logically consistent. Our method of logic is a post facto. It's something that we come up with as a mechanism for grasping reality. And here, what are we after? We are really after reality. Yeah. The framework in terms of which it's the best kind of tool that we have right now. So whatever tool we have, we use it to grasp what we call reality. And with time, it is going to become a better and better assessment of what that is. That's all. Does that address your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Swamiji,
Haji.
that's the problem. Like most of the time, we get a hold of the wrong myself, wrong subject. So
Auntie.
that is the thing. So this is also like we get a hold of like not the real subject. We hold up the those body mind complex, and we feel this is what I am.
ठीक है. So what?
So we have to get a hold
I mean,
of-
so basically the thing is, I mean, whether right or wrong, this is what it is. That's all. So essentially a kind of a non-judgmental look at oneself. This is what it is. Yeah. See, essentially what happens is that, in fact, actually you'll see Vivekananda in Raja Yoga, he gives these things. When you sit down for meditation, he gives this as a practice. Immediately, I mean, one of our erstwhile presidents, Bhutashanji, said, see, immediately we start doing this, it's like this, taking on a boat, catching hold of the oars, and immediately, vigorously turning it right round and round. Yeah. Without paying attention, is it tight somewhere, is it balanced, etc., etc. Yeah. So, which is why, actually, in this Raja Yoga, Vivekananda advocates the following: when you sit down, first, essentially, where is my mind now? So, which means basically, what is it throwing up? Just observe it. It's what is happening. What will happen is that it keeps bubbling. Hey, after having spent a day doing all kinds of stuff, suddenly there's going to be a different compartment of the mind that's going to open up. No. Yeah. Which means essentially this alertness or awareness is to be carried on throughout the day. Yeah. And then when we are doing this introspection or meditation or whatever, which we in the initial stages, this is a spiritual practice and that is not. Yeah, eating food is not, but sitting in front on a chair and reading some scripture or sitting in some posture and breathing through the nose in one way or another is what spiritual practice is. So that's not what it is about. It is supposed to be the substratum of all experience. Yeah, so which means basically it starts expanding. And then understand, okay, all this division that we are creating between this is sacred, this is secular, this is spiritual, this is unspiritual, blah, 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 is one more extra mess that we create. Yeah, so which means basically that it's trying to retain that poise in and through every activity. Bob, yes.
Yeah, it's a wonderful exercise to take ourselves out from the
equation.
work that we have done,
Yes.
and then analyze that one. That, why it happened.
Yeah.
So we have to segregate me and my work.
That's correct.
And if we can do that one few times a day during the time, it's a
Wonderful.
tremendous benefit.
Of course it is.
And but now to remember that how often can we do that? And more often we do that, and at the end of the week we see that we became a little more
Exactly.
efficient in our
Exactly. 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 So here is one particular thing, and this is probably one of the reasons why Vivekananda advocated Karma Yoga or work, particularly in India, as opposed to the West. See, this notion of collective work. This I found during when I was a student, even today. There might be people who are not particularly on good terms with each other, but when it comes to a job, yeah, they immediately, okay, this job, this is to be done, this is supposed to be the output of the job, and my personal like or dislike of this other person involved in the job is not important. This certain level of recognition I find much more prevalent in the West than in India. And therefore, essentially, so people who can't stand each other, they'll just get together. This is to be done. I hate your guts, but this is a job to be done. Yeah. So, but this is what's happening is essentially this personality is being removed, and this objective work is being put in its place. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you say, fine, what is it? It was a job well done. That's it. That's the aim and end of it. Yeah. Which is why this was advocated more and more in India, where, in India, this devotion, etc., yes, it's a very personal thing. People very naturally take to it. Yeah. But this dissociation of the I from the work at hand is not something that we are particularly accustomed to doing, which is why, it says that organizing these various powers and the way we do it within subjectively is exactly the way society functions also. There is a division of labor. Different people do various different kinds of things. And it functions well when all these different units come together and the composite, the output of it is more than the sum of its parts. Yeah. So yeah. So I think the more one practices it, okay, fine, in a situation, yeah, maybe whatever my personal like or dislike is not going to be addressed. But that's not the point of the work. The job is not particularly has not written some document saying that, look, the point of this job which is going on in the world, its primary objective is to satisfy my stupid likes or dislikes. It's not its aim. That recognition itself during the course of work, yeah, which is something that we are forced to do in any case. So why not do it voluntarily? All right, maybe we should probably move to the next bit, which is a somewhat different topic. Master to Mahima, please recite that verse, the one about devotion to Hari. Mahima Charan recited, quoting from Narada Pancharatra. What need is there of penance if God is worshipped with love? What is the use of penance if God is not worshipped with love? What need is there of penance if God is seen within and without? What is the use of penance if God is not seen within and without? Master, recite that part also. Obtain from him the love of God. Mahima recited, O Brahman, O my child, cease from practicing further penances. Hasten to Shankara, the ocean of heavenly wisdom. Obtain from him the love of God, the pure love praised by devotees, which snaps in twain the shackles that bind you to the world. Master. Yes, Shankara will bestow the love of God, Mahima. One who is free from bondage is the eternal Shiva. Master. Shame, hatred, fear, hesitation, these are the shackles. What do you say, Mahima? Yes, sir. And also the desire to conceal and shrinking before praise. Master, there are two signs of knowledge. First, an unshakable buddhi. No matter how many sorrows, afflictions, dangers, and obstacles one may be faced with, one's mind does not undergo any change. It is like the blacksmith's anvil, which receives constant blows from the hammer and still remains unshaken. And second, manliness, very strong grit. If lust and anger injure a man, he must renounce them once for all. If a tortoise once tucks in its limbs, it won't put them out again, though you may cut it into 4 pieces. To Thakurdada and the others, there are 2 kinds of renunciation, intense and feeble. Feeble renunciation is a slow process. One moves in a slow rhythm. Intense renunciation is like the sharp edge of a razor. It cuts the bondage of Maya easily and at once. One farmer labors for days to bring water from the lake to his field. But his efforts are futile because he has no grit. Another farmer, after laboring for 2 or 3 days, takes a vow and says, I will bring water into my field today, and not till then will I go home. He puts aside all thought of his bath or his meal. He labors the whole day and feels great joy when in the evening he finds water entering his field with a murmuring sound. Then he goes home and says to his wife, now give me some oil, I shall take my bath. After finishing his bath and his meal, he lies down to sleep with a peaceful mind. Okay. So there is one thing here which is somewhat related to what we were discussing. It's this bit, 2 signs of knowledge. First, the steadfast conviction, what is called unshakable buddhi. And second, very strong grit. Yeah? This is exactly what Vivekananda called manliness in those times. Yeah? Essentially, this strength of mind is exactly what this is about. Yeah? One, a conviction which cannot be shaken by various things. Second, this is a kind of the static aspect. These are 2 things, static and dynamic aspects of the same thing. One, a certain conviction about what is true. Yeah? And second, the determination. So this is the static part of it. The dynamic is the movement towards it, irrespective of what happens, whatever obstacles come one's way, one is going to continue with whatever one has decided is the path towards that goal, which means essentially understanding this is my goal, the static part of it, clearly without any obscurity. Second, that I need to move towards it and do my best. So that second part is the motion movement of the dynamic movement of the subject, yeah, the subjective awareness towards that goal, awareness of the goal and movement towards it. The stronger these are, the stronger the mind. And this is all that is meant by strength of mind. That's all that it is. Yeah? And irrespective of what obstacles come, that is held on to. I think we had discussed this way back. See, particularly when, obstacles come to the lives of everybody. What do we do about our spiritual practice at that time? At that point of time, maybe the one is having to run to and fro from, and basically the physical situation is such that what we usually call spiritual practice, we don't have time for, we don't have the mental setup for. But can we keep on holding the strength of mind there? Would be, look, this is my goal, independent in and through this, this is where I have to move. Yeah? Then that action itself, in the midst of say traveling on a bus which has people breathing down one's neck, yeah? If subjectively one holds on to whatever, this is my conviction, that's it. So whatever your subjective practice is, holding on to that in the midst of that, in whatever way possible. What is happening is that the mind is being trained to think that whatever little games I might throw, oh, it is too hot to do spiritual practice. Oh, this fellow is stinking just next to me. Whatever it is. But I am going to hold on to that. These little games that the mind plays, I am not going to yield. Yeah, that message is going. Yeah. Essentially, that's all this. That's exactly what this observation of the mind is. But that's not what it is about. This is secondary. I am going to hold on to this. Whatever you, meaning the rest of my mind, keeps on doing. Yeah? This is really that grit that is being talked about. Yeah? Which means not only an awareness of where one is headed, but also the simultaneous practice of that. So, subjective awareness coupled with a personal practice. Okay, so now I think this was the second part, and now I think we can again open it up for discussion. Please. This and it's, I think there are two signs of knowledge. First, unshakable buddhi, and second, very strong grit. Okay, very good. Now, yes. Yes.
He said instant renunciation. And
Intense
slowly
renunciation. Yes, that's
Which
right.
one is what? Every individual is different.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Who can do intense like
Yes, exactly. So, which
slowly.
means we can cultivate it. So, here is one example that I'll have to give. Our Swami Ranganathanji is the 13th president of our order. So, he was in charge of the Rangoon Ashrama once upon a time, just before the Second World War. Yeah. And it was it was like a hospital. Yeah. So, there were basically the Burmese patients used to come there. Start of the Second World War, it was bombed. So he had to leave. Fine. This was my job so far. Now it's done. And he decided to walk with the rest of the ordinary people. He was offered a steamer ticket. He says, no, my job is with these people, so I'll walk with them. So they walked through all from Rangoon. They walked all the way to the northeast of India, came in. He lost half his body weight. He was 39 or 40 kilos when he got in. And his intestines were damaged for life. So, till the end of, till about from 70 till the end of his life, he would just live on a paste. But that is what grit is. And you walk through the forest, bunch of people in that company died on the way. Not from bombing or anything, from natural causes. It's not a particularly comfortable walk from Rangoon to, say, Northeast India. Yeah. You want to walk through a forest. But that's a grit that was involved. But leaving something which he had been devoted to, the building of this hospital center, that's the thing. It's razor sharp. Okay, fine, job is done. Now I can't do anything about it. This is my job now. This capacity to quit whatever one is being dedicated to, there's nothing wrong about it. It's pretty important thing. And take up whatever is the present situation demands. This is one. After that, soon after that, he was posted at Karachi. And 1947, yeah, independence happened, riots happened. One day he came back and found that some vandals had come along and had set fire to the ashrama there. All right, job here is done. Let us go back. End of story. Yeah. So basically, this capacity to not get emotionally, I mean, this is a job like any other job. So far, it was this. Now it's done, finished. Move on, move on. This is what it is about. And this, and there is no passion. Oh, this is a terrible people. Blah blah blah. What's the point? It's a waste of mental energy. Yeah? That's exactly what this is. This does. So essentially, that mind, if it remains calm, so this is what was my job so far. I'm not particularly. I mean, it was a job. It was to be done. Now it's not going to be done. Now there's something else. Move on. Yeah, this calmness of moving away instant. These are very. I mean, we've heard these stories and we saw these people, and therefore it's clear that it's something that it is possible. What Sri Ramakrishna talks about here as intense renunciation, it's possible that people do have it. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, there was somebody else. Yes, please.
Swamiji, so how does one practice truth or practice knowledge? Is it just
Oh, wonderful. Practice truth and practice knowledge. Very good. Practice of truth is something fairly, it's actually, yeah, we don't usually understand that truth is something to be practiced. So here is the thing. And we start with the crudest thing when we say something. Yeah? When we say something, do we have the awareness? I mean, somebody asks us a question. Sometimes we respond for effect. Yeah? And sometimes we say basically because we completely have a conviction this is true. Yeah? That little bit of introspection. Am I saying this because it's pleasant? Am I saying it because I am convinced it is true? So, for instance, and then it moves on. In each individual's life, it will take different forms. So, suppose you say, "Oh, and then we say something. Oh, this has been said. Some so and so has said it." Then we ask ourselves, "Do I really remember that it is from such and such a place?" Here is one simple thing. Today, the amount of fake news that comes along on this social media, WhatsApp, is incredible. Yeah, there is a formal mathematical reason for it, which I'll come to later on. It's only partly a joke, but when we read that, do we ask ourselves, is this really true or is it propaganda? Do we check it against facts? All kinds of versions and everything is going to come along posing as history. Do we make the effort to evaluate? Which means basically, say for instance, I mean, here is the point. There are ideologies. There's a left ideology, there's a right ideology, there's a center ideology, and the blah, 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 and there's a right of center and left of center and hocus pocus. Yeah? Ideology is not what truth is about. It's a bunch of opinions, which means essentially, are we sifting through it to get at facts? Facts which are independent of my opinion, which are independent of of the person who has said it his opinion. Yeah? It does not mean that there are people with a certain that I will not like. It's possible that you like people with a certain ideology, dislike people with a certain other ideology. That's possible. However, when something is said, do you examine it against facts? This is something that we can do. Our present day provides ample opportunity for it, enormous opportunity. And why? Here is where the mathematical theorem comes from. And I think the common sense part of it is what I'll say first. It's much easier to generate fake news than to put in this extra amount of labor to decipher and find out which part of it is actually recorded, factual, blah, 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 and which part of it is just some bunch of opinions because the person wants to sell a particular brand of the story. Yeah? So how are we going to decide, for instance, you are asking what exactly does the practice of truth mean? Yeah? So very simple. So for example, if you go into social media, you will find all kinds of echo chambers. One echo chamber is selling one particular narrative. Another echo chamber is selling another particular narrative. Yeah? Narrative is not truth. Then here is a simple thing. Well, then what would be a practical means of finding out, given a bunch of narratives, to determine, okay, fine, so and so is saying this, so and so is saying this. What is good? Finally, you look through all the stories, you'll see, okay, there is this group of people who come from such and such ideology, they will be propagating this narrative. There is this group of people coming from this other idea, the story that they want to propagate, they'll be propagating this other narrative. Now you look through those stories and then throw out, what do? They will underemphasize certain things, overemphasize certain other things. Correct? There'll be one paragraph written on how so and so is terrible, and then just one line, oh, but that person did such and such. Which is good. And the other person, the other group will say that no, this thing, that there will be one paragraph devoted to that one sentence which was there and dismissed, and the rest will be summarized in one line. These are the standard tricks that these narrative sellers sell. Yeah? What can you do if you are interested in practicing of the truth? What do? You look at these two narratives. And it's important that you see these things from these two different points of view are. Play them off against each other. What survives is factual. What is common to both of them would be a first approximation to truth. But that means basically it's essentially saying that, okay, there is this ideological perspective, there's this ideology, there's that ideology. If I am committed to the truth, then I look at both these narratives and then essentially dispense with all the emotional tripe and garbage that is used to cover up facts. Once you start factoring, okay, fine. Somebody saying, oh, this is a terrible thing. Oh, this is such a great thing. Immediately it sounds fake. Right? So then you just throw it away. So then you pick out, okay, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. Without, again, what it does is that it allows us to decipher those particular things without jumping to a judgment call. That is what essentially, whether it's a judgment where the mind wants to say, oh, this is good, this is something that is very close to me, it is therefore good. No, this is some terrible fellow. This emotional coloring of the mind, yeah, is slowly dissected and removed. That is, so this is, actually, this fake news today. What is the mathematical thing behind it? Here is a simple thing, simple problem. I'll tell you where this is related, how this is related to this other problem. So suppose you take, you know what prime numbers are? Numbers which do not have factors other than 1 in itself. Yeah? So take two 50-digit prime numbers. Yeah? Multiply them together. It's going to be a 100-digit object. Yeah? Give it to the person and say, ask, is this a prime or is this not a prime? You know secretly it's a product of two 50-digit prime numbers. Yeah? The person who looks at it will have to start investigating the best algorithm to do it. It has to start checking. Does it divisible by 2? No. Divisible by 3? No. 5? No. 7? No. Etc. 11? No. And it has to go up to that 50-digit number because, now they have a factor. This is what a person who has to test whether a 100-digit number is prime has to do. But you know the answer. you secretly tell somebody what the answer is. What is that person going to do? Is going to take this 50-digit number, that 50-digit number, put it into a computer, say multiply these two. Within a split second, the answer will come and it's going to match up with that. Which means, if you know the true answer, it takes a fraction of a second to check. But in order to test whether that assertion is true or not, it might even take a day. Yeah. This is which means what? This is a theorem. Yeah. So this is exactly what it is. The testing of something as true, yeah, is a much more energy intensive work than the propagation of ideologies and falsehoods. Yeah. Therefore, the practice of truth is something that we have to train ourselves for. It does not come for free. And particularly in the day of social media and fake news, people are much more invested in throwing out stupid narratives. Why? Because the narratives are going to catch hold of the part of the mind which responds emotionally. And then people are going to get invested and somebody is going to reap the benefits of that emotional investment. Yeah? The practice of truth is hard. Yeah? These are instances of what it is. Okay. We are past 8:30. Okay. All right. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Jananing Sharadam Deving Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum. Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. All right. There is nobody on the thing, right? Just end stream. Okay, very good.